Analyzing and addressing systemic flaws in power structures. Hierarchical versus distributed systems, a call for reform. Introduction. Power structures serve as the framework for governance, shaping the distribution of authority and resources within society. However, the current system is fraught with flaws, perpetuating inequity and disenfranchisement among diverse populations. This report examines the broken nature of the current power system, highlighting its religious bias, lack of representation, and exploitation of resources, while also delving into the distinctions between hierarchical and distributed systems. It will explore vulnerabilities to corruption and propose solutions. Additionally, it will address the need for reform to foster inclusive and equitable governance, empowering individual citizens, and emphasizing the role of strict regulations and legal punishment in corruption mitigation. The broken current system. The current power system is characterized by systemic flaws that perpetuate inequality and marginalization. Religious bias. The system is influenced by religious biases, favoring certain beliefs over others and marginalizing minorities. This bias undermines secular principles and violates the rights of individuals. Historical conflicts. Deep-seated religious conflicts, particularly between Jewish and Christian beliefs versus Islam, have shaped the current power structure. These historical tensions continue to fuel division and animosity, perpetuating cycles of violence and discrimination. Marginalization of minority groups. The power structure marginalizes minority groups, exacerbating religious and ethnic divisions. This marginalization fuels social unrest and undermines efforts to promote peace and reconciliation among diverse communities. Lack of representation. The power structure is predominantly white and fails to represent the multi-ethnic, cultural, and belief systems of the citizenry. This lack of representation marginalizes minority groups and perpetuates systemic racism and discrimination. Exploitation of resources. The current system often serves the interests of a privileged few at the expense of the many, exploiting resources and perpetuating economic disparities. This exploitation exacerbates social inequalities and hinders opportunities for upward mobility among marginalized communities. Impact of systemic flaws. These systemic flaws have far-reaching consequences, including religious tensions. Religious biases and historical conflicts exacerbate tensions between different faith communities, undermining social cohesion and fostering distrust and animosity. Marginalization. Minority groups and communities are systematically excluded from decision-making processes and denied equal access to resources and opportunities. Inequality. The current power structure reinforces existing inequalities, perpetuating disparities in wealth, education, and access to justice. This inequality undermines social cohesion and hinders collective progress. Distrust and disenfranchisement. The lack of representation and accountability erodes public trust in the government and democratic institutions, leading to disenfranchisement and disengagement among citizens. The need for reform. Addressing these systemic flaws requires comprehensive reform efforts that prioritize inclusivity, representation, and equity, diversity and inclusion. Reform efforts must prioritize diversity and inclusion in governance structures, ensuring that decision-making bodies reflect the demographic diversity of the population and amplify the voices of marginalized communities. Interfaith dialogue. Promoting interfaith dialogue and understanding is essential for bridging religious divides and fostering mutual respect and tolerance among diverse communities. Secular governance. Upholding secular principles is crucial for preventing undue influence from religious institutions in governance. Reform efforts should prioritize the separation of religion and state to ensure equal treatment for all beliefs. Conflict resolution. Addressing historical conflicts and promoting reconciliation is essential for fostering peace and stability in conflict-affected regions. Reform efforts should prioritize conflict resolution mechanisms and support efforts to promote dialogue and peace-building among warring factions. Resource redistribution. Reforming economic policies to prioritize resource redistribution and address systemic inequalities is essential for promoting social justice and economic empowerment among marginalized communities. Hierarchical systems. Hierarchical systems concentrate power at the top, with authority flowing downward through tiers of authority. Examples include traditional governmental structures and corporate organizations. Vulnerabilities and types of attacks. Centralization vulnerability. Hierarchical systems are susceptible to corruption due to the concentration of power. Types of attacks include bribery of high-ranking officials or manipulation of decision-makers. Lack of transparency. Decision-making processes may lack transparency, allowing for covert manipulation and corrupt practices such as kickbacks or cronyism. Bureaucratic inefficiency. Rigidity and bureaucracy in hierarchical systems can create loopholes for corruption, such as embezzlement or nepotism. Solutions and pros/cons. Decentralization. Implementing decentralization measures can distribute power and decision-making authority, reducing vulnerabilities to corruption. However, this may lead to coordination challenges and governance friction. Transparency measures. Enhancing transparency through open data initiatives and whistleblower protections can increase accountability and deter corrupt behavior. Yet, this may compromise privacy and confidentiality. Independent oversight. Establishing independent oversight bodies and anti-corruption agencies can provide checks and balances, but may face challenges of political interference and resource constraints. Distributed systems. Distributed systems disperse power among interconnected nodes or individuals, promoting decentralization and autonomy. Vulnerabilities and types of attacks. 𝗧𝗿𝗶𝗁𝗱𝗶𝗴𝗏 attacks. Malicious actors may exploit distributed systems through 𝗧𝗿𝗶𝗁𝗱𝗏 attacks, creating multiple fake identities to manipulate decision outcomes or control resources. Collusion. Collusion among a subset of participants can undermine the integrity of decision-making processes, leading to corruption and favoritism. Governance friction. Decentralized decision-making may lead to governance friction, hindering effective decision-making and creating opportunities for exploitation. Solutions and pros/cons. Identity verification. Implementing mechanisms to verify the identity of participants can help prevent the creation of fake identities. This may involve requiring participants to provide proof of identity or undergo a verification process participating in governmental activity. Consensus mechanisms. Implementing robust consensus mechanisms, such as proof of stake or proof of work, can mitigate 𝗧𝗿𝗶𝗁𝗱𝗏 attacks and ensure the integrity of decision-making processes. However, these mechanisms may be resource-intensive and computationally complex. Transparent governance. Promoting transparency and accountability in governance processes, such as through open-source protocols and public audits, can enhance trust and legitimacy. Yet, this may require significant coordination and resource allocation. Community engagement. Fostering community engagement and participation in decision-making can promote inclusivity and democratic values, but may face challenges of scalability and representation. Empowering individual citizens. Empowering individual citizens in governance can mitigate vulnerabilities to corruption and promote transparency and accountability. Solutions and pros/cons. Direct democratic processes. Enabling citizens to propose, vote on, and enact laws through direct democratic processes can enhance transparency and legitimacy. However, this may require education and infrastructure to facilitate participation. Decentralized governance platforms. Leveraging blockchain technology and decentralized platforms can promote transparency and reduce the risk of manipulation. Yet, this may face challenges of scalability and technological barriers. Legal enforcement. Implementing strict rules, regulations, and harsh legal punishments for corrupt practices can deter corruption and uphold the rule of law. However, this may require robust enforcement mechanisms and judicial independence. Conclusion. The current power system is riddled with systemic flaws that perpetuate inequality, marginalization, and exploitation. Addressing these flaws requires comprehensive reform efforts that prioritize diversity, inclusion, and equity in governance. By advocating for secular governance, representation, and resource redistribution, societies can build a more inclusive and equitable power structure that serves the interests of all citizens, regardless of their ethnicity, culture, or belief system. Furthermore, Both hierarchical and distributed systems have vulnerabilities to corruption, but each presents unique challenges and opportunities for mitigation. Decentralization, transparency measures, and community engagement can enhance accountability and trust in governance. Empowering individual citizens through direct democratic processes and legal enforcement can promote transparency, accountability, and the rule of law. By implementing a combination of these approaches, we can build more resilient and equitable power structures that uphold democratic values and mitigate corruption effectively.